Several weeks ago, the Manitoba government of Brian Pallister released a report, it's the Economic Review on Bipole 3 and Keeyask, that was headed up by former Saskatchewan Premier Brad Wall. The report examined the cost overruns and environmental concerns associated with construction of the Keeyask generating station and the routing of the Bipole 3 transmission line. And it's been a real hot topic in Manitoba ever since. I'll be talking to Chris Adams, who is an adjunct professor of political science at the University of Manitoba. Welcome to the interview, Chris.
Thank you, Mark. It's nice to be with you today.
Why don't we start with an overview of the report? What's your take on it?
Well, I have to say that I haven't read the report. Very few people have. It's 6 volumes that sits, on a table at the legislature. It's, I think, 10 to 20,000 pages in length. So my understanding of this really is through media reports, but there's been a fair amount of talk here in Manitoba since that report came out.
And the Wall report was fairly critical of the previous NDP government that oversaw a lot of the decisions around these projects. And my take on this, I mean, at least at first blush, is that generally when governments commission these kind of reviews, they get people to run them that give them the report they wanted. And it almost seems like that was the case here.
Yeah, this report, from what I understand, is a compilation. Much of it is a compilation of earlier reports. So it's not like a brand new material brought forward, but it does raise some questioning by people that why Brad Wall was the person brought in. And I don't know if you know this, but Gordon Campbell, the past Liberal Premier of British Columbia, and as we know, the Liberal Party in British Columbia is very much a conservative party in British Columbia, unlike Liberal parties in other parts of the country. Gordon Campbell was originally to be heading up this commission. He was replaced by Brad Wall due to certain allegations about Gordon Campbell that surfaced. So we've had actually 2 heads of this commission, both of whom were right of center premiers hired by the Progressive Conservative Party of Manitoba, not the party itself, but a government led by the PCs. It does cause some concerns. That I'm not a partisan person, I'm not a member of a party, but it does raise concerns about having the head of a commission who was head of the Saskatchewan party government in Saskatchewan, and who's doing a critique of the NDP government in Manitoba when it was launching the Keeyask station and Bipole 3, which, it's true, the costs ballooned from just over 9 billion over to 13.5 billion. So, we as taxpayers and as citizens were very concerned about, what went on to cause this. But at the same time, I think the optics are a little bit disconcerting about having the head of a commission who is a premier of a right of center party right next door to us.
Now, there was a little bit of concern expressed in the media that maybe this report might be used to privatize Manitoba Hydro. Premier Pallister said that wasn't the case. But what's your take on that?
Privatizing Manitoba Hydro is a big issue here in Manitoba. Hydro is seen as really, for a long time, the mother's milk of our economy. I've sat with the media during the budget lockdowns when the Manitoba budget was brought forward, when Gary Doer was the premier, when Greg Selinger was the NDP premier, and since then with Pallister as the premier. The money that comes in, the revenues to the public coffers from Manitoba Hydro, not as significant as it is now as it was back in the NDP days, but there's very much concern about privatization. Markham, we have to remember that Manitoba Telecom Services, which was a publicly owned telecom in Manitoba, was privatized in the mid-1990s under the Progressive Conservative government. So there is concern that the same type of thing might be happening right now. So it's a hot button issue. I do know the last number of provincial elections, in many ways, the NDP has tried to peg the PCs as privatizing hydro. So now the fears are rampant right now.
Is it fair to say, Chris, that in Manitoba, the narrative around the future of the electrical system, and this is something we've covered at Energy Media a lot, all over North America and Europe, the energy transition is transforming the way utilities do business. The Manitoba Hydro's, vertically integrated cost of service model is breaking up in other parts of the world and going to different models. Is that any part of the public narrative, the public conversation, or is the conversation around the future of electricity kind of centered on hydro and whether it'll be privatized or not?
I think the discussions going on in the public media aren't about the structure of the industry, but it's more more on an ideological side of things. That is a government now that's more on the side of privatization, having replaced 6 years ago, an NDP government that was more open to public ownership of property. So I think right now the premier has got to mollify the public's concern about privatization. We do know that there has been some part of Hydro International has been told to stop bidding on things. So there already are some indication. But, Markham, I think we have to realize that these things like Keeyask and Bipole 3 were decisions made when there was a lot of money rolling in with hydroelectricity. And it's the problem when you do long-term investments on things that go up and down in what they're doing for you. So I think decisions were made during the boom era, and now the review is coming out during a period in which the value is not as high.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much, Chris, for this. Really appreciate it.
Great. Nice to be with you, Markham.